everyone, welcome back to Leandra the TBR0. I'm Leandra, and the goal for this channel is to slowly but surely lessen my physical TBR. If that's a goal of yours, then welcome to the team. Let's support each other. If you have no intention of lessening your physical TBR, but you want to watch the successes and failures of a stranger on the internet, then welcome as well. So for today though, what I want to focus on is the latter half of my September wrap-up. I ended up already posting a part 1 that should be below in the description if you're interested in seeing what I read at the beginning of September, but for today I'm going to be focusing on the last 4 books that I finished. Before I get into it though, I'll list off the titles that I've already read and reviewed just to see if you're actually interested. They are Toni Morrison's A Mercy. We also have Something's Guava Give by Carrie Doyle. I also finished Tessa Bailey's It Happened One Summer, Murder by the Book, a Golden Age detective fiction anthology, which was so fun. And finally, I finished Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. So if any of those sound interesting, or you've already read them and want to hear my thoughts, again, in the description below. But without further ado, let's get started with my September wrap-up part 2. So, oh god damn it, and now my feet are falling asleep. Why? Okay, anyway, I just finished Small Favors when I posted my part 1 for September, and what's really interesting is that among the main characters in that book, there's a set of twins, and their relationship, the way they interact and perceive themselves in this world is so influential to so many other different variables in the book that I just really enjoyed that concept. I thought it was really interesting. I don't read books with twins very often, so it was very humorous and coincidental that I then started the Bright Storm series by Vashti Hardy. This is a middle grade adventure series. I also read book 2 this month, or last month, which was Darkwhispers, holding it in front of you as you can see. The reason why I was inspired to read this series is because book 3 just came out at the end of October, at least no it wasn't, at the end of August, and it's called Fire Song, and it may have come out a lot more recently in other countries, but in the US it came out in August. And I didn't end up reading it because I just don't have access to it. I don't have it at my library. I chose not to buy it brand new. I already owned these 2, hence why I read them, and I enjoyed it so much. So this is another series that features twins, as I mentioned. So I went from one book that was a dark YA fantasy to now a middle grade adventure book, 3 books in a row with twins. And I just love those types of coincidences when you're looking through your TBR because it's completely unintentional. But we have Arthur and Maudie Brightstorm. Their last name is also the title of this book, and they're part of a family of new explorers. In this world, exploration is still a very popular, important part of their society. It's kind of an interesting concept because I feel like nowadays if we think of a book that features exploration, it must be historical fiction because our Earth has been scavenged and just completely explored, at least to our knowledge, with the, I guess, exemption of the deep blue sea, right? The very deep still has mysteries, but land masses don't really hold much mystery for us anymore. But with this society, they still are trying to discover new flora and fauna. And it's a really interesting concept. Even more so, the technology of how they travel is not like what we're used to. So if you can see in the picture, we've got this huge balloon, we've got a ship, but it's above the city, and these are sky ships. So as opposed to water ships, which apparently is a very outdated mode of travel, all of these explorers travel with sky ships. And so Arthur and Maudie's father, he goes off on this competition. There are many other sky ships involved, and the goal is to fly to South Polaris, this point where no other ship, no other person has ever been before, and then travel back safely. And all of the other ships return, but Arthur and Maudie's father doesn't, nor does his crew or ship, and it is the story that he and his crew were unfortunately attacked and killed by this mysterious dark wolf creatures, like a pack of monsters that has not yet been identified or discovered by humankind. On top of that, their father is charged with stealing the fuel from another ship in order to get ahead in this competition. And since he doesn't return and he's presumed dead, they end up repossessing his home, taking all of his money. So Arthur and Maudie are not only orphans, but now they're homeless and have no way of supporting themselves. So what do? They decide that it's up to them to clear the Brightstorm name and find some answers to figure out what actually happened to their father. They join the crew of the Aurora. The explorer is Harriet Culpeper. And what's interesting is that, so the Brightstorms, they're new explorers. They aren't really respected. They don't have much reputation. And there's a lot of classism in this society. There are old family explorers from generations past, and they often are far wealthier because they've found certain riches in other lands. They've exploited the land, and they just make money with their discoveries. Whereas, again, the Brightstorms come from a new explorer bloodline. Harriet Culpeper, she also comes from the old family, but she has a lot of new age ideas, and she's just such a wonderful, adult figure for them to look up to. And it's really a found family kind of book. Maudie and Arthur are lost in this world, and they don't really know what to do, and they just find the Aurora, find the crew, and it's just a really beautiful, nice story. Another thing that just happens throughout the entire series, at least for the first 2 books, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in Fire Song as well, is this theme of conservation, of respecting nature, the flora and the fauna that exist, and there is 100% a message to be against and question any type of idea of conquering land, conquering other beings that we think we're superior to, exploiting those resources, and ultimately killing the earth in order to get ahead as a species. You totally see it in both books. In Darkwhispers, we see it so much more emphasized, and oh my gosh. So I loved Brightstorm, but I really loved Darkwhispers. Vashti Hardy 100% upped her game when she wrote this particular one. And while I don't think I've spoiled anything for Brightstorm, to say that they go off on another mission on the Aurora, I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone. But they are challenged so much more in this book. They have to challenge their own ideas. The twins especially have to, I think this was more of a focus, Brightstorm, focused more on themselves as like twins, as family, as sticking together, as supporting each other, and just being one person. Whereas Darkwhispers, they're a bit older, which I love when we see the characters slowly getting older. And Arthur and Maudie are realizing they're individuals. They have different thoughts, they have different passions, different goals for what they want to do in the future. And I think that this book allows them to branch off a little bit, especially because we get multiple perspectives in this book that are a bit more concrete, because they're off having to face their own battles and conflicts. So, I just can't talk about how much I love this series so much. I highly recommend it, especially if you're in a reading slump. This is just so enjoyable. And like I said, there are some significantly complex and topical themes in here that I'm so excited to know that younger generations are reading and learning about. So Vashti Hardy, thank you so much for writing this series. I can't wait to eventually read book 3. I'll probably reread these 2 books to enjoy before I finally read book 3, because I don't view it as a chore to go back and enjoy the series again. So if it's not already clear, I'm giving both of these book 5 stars. They were great. They're exactly what I needed during the very hectic month that was September. Another book that I ended up finishing in September was Austenland by Shannon Hale. I'll make sure to have the graphic here if I don't already. I ended up reading this book because the director of the library where I work, she recommended it to me because I finished Emma not too long ago. She realized I was on this Austen journey, and so she recommended that I read this very humorous, modern ode to Jane Austen and her canon. I really did enjoy it. It was so humorous. I didn't end up physically reading it. I actually ended up listening to the audiobook, and the voice narrator did a brilliant job. She was just so good at being able to pace herself in her dialogue and other people's dialogue. She knew how to deliver a line that was meant to be humorous, meant to be sarcastic. So I found it really enjoyable. I felt like I was listening to the movie, which I know the movie exists. I haven't seen it yet, but I felt like I was just listening to the movie. That's how engaged her voice was. So definitely recommend the audiobook if you want to listen to it rather than read it. But anyway, so what it is it's, I think this was written in either the late 2000s or early 2010s. I can't remember. But our main character, Jane, of course, she ends up just being in love with everything Jane Austen. It has given her way too high expectations when it comes to love and relationships and pretty much just what she thinks a relationship is and how it's meant to progress. And I believe it's a distant aunt who understands that she's having this difficulty of letting go the Mr. Darcys of the world, imagining that there is a Mr. Darcy for her somewhere. So her aunt ends up in her will giving her this all expenses paid trip to some very exclusive retreat in England where actors are paid to pretend as if they are in the Regency era. So Jane, of course, takes the trip. She goes off on there, and it's really interesting to see her really navigate in this society. You get to see her flaunt her knowledge, but she also tests herself, and there are moments where she genuinely feels like it's too much. Like she's like, why am I doing this? This is absurd and ridiculous, which I love because we don't really get to see characters, you know, reflect on their actions and what they're doing. And it's really metafictional because she's playing a character within a book, right? Because she doesn't realize she's not real, but she knows that her character within the Regency era isn't real. Anyway, it was really funny. And there are times where she begins to wonder what is real and what is fake, especially as she pursues certain romantic interactions with some of these actors. She's wondering, am I genuinely still being this character in the Regency era, or is there some truth to what's happening? So it's a really enjoyable, fun book, definitely mindless in the best ways, and I ended up giving it a solid 3 stars. So I recommend it, especially if you really enjoy anything Jane Austen. I think that it may have even been better for me if I had read more Jane Austen than I have, but I 100% do not regret reading it. It was just a good time. And finally, I only read 4 books in the latter half of September because I did have a few DNFs. I'm not going to talk about them because none of them were DNF'd because I have no intention of ever picking them up again. I think that if I felt certain that I wouldn't read them ever again, I might mention them, but because it's more so I just know that I'm just not in the right headspace for them, that's why I've DNF'd them, and it's been a bit slower of a half month of September, at least it was. But anyway, so the last book that I ended up finishing in September was A Line in the Sand by Terry Wilson. You probably recognize the author's name if you listen to my August wrap-up videos, because I did read A Spot of Trouble by Terry Wilson in August. That was the first in the Turtle Beach love romance series, and A Line in the Sand was her most recent publication. I ended up listening to the audiobook. It was interesting to listen to book 2 after having physically read book 1, especially because it gave a different type of texture to the same setting, because in A Spot of Trouble, as well as in A Line in the Sand, it's the Turtle Beach series because it's set in Turtle Beach, North Carolina. This is an island, apparently just off the coast of North Carolina, and it's a very small knit community. Everyone is so close. The elderly community especially pretty much runs the town and controls everything, which is quite fun and humorous. But we have a brand new couple, and one of course is a local, the other one moves in. I think that seems to be the theme, and I'm totally for it. And just like in A Spot of Trouble, it's very much grumpy sunshine vibes. There is a little bit of rivalry or tension that suggests it could be enemies to lovers, but it's all in good fun, and it's never really taken seriously, the idea that they're enemies, so I don't think it necessarily counts for that. If you can see from the cover, we've got Molly, who part of her job is dressing up like a mermaid for the local aquarium. And then we have, what's his name? Max. So we have Molly and Max, he comes to town in order to revamp the aquarium. It was his uncle's, but it's currently in dire straits. It is at risk of closing. And so he has one idea of how to save the aquarium, Molly has another, and of course they slowly begin to experience this romantic tension between the two of them. I found it really cute. There's a continuing theme of dogs as well, because we have a King Cavalier Spaniel, I think it is. King Cavalier Charles Spaniel. In A Spot of Trouble, of course, we had 2 Dalmatians. All of the characters in A Spot of Trouble do make a little appearance here and there in A Line in the Sand, which was really cute. And yeah, so I did really enjoy a lot of the aspects. The only problem is that, unfortunately, I didn't like it as much as A Spot of Trouble. And I think that's because it was getting a little too dramatic. Like, just like in A Spot of Trouble, my main problem was the escalation of the romance. Not physically, because both of these books are very clean, I would say. They don't do anything beyond kissing. And with this one, though, it's, again, there's no dating. Like, there's no moment where they're dating. But then by the end of the book, they're saying, I love you. It just doesn't make sense to me. Sometimes it feels as if Molly is way more dramatic in regards to like her abilities, or at least like if something goes wrong, it's just the end of the world. And I'm pretty sure she's in her mid-20s, so I don't think she should be feeling that way, especially because she has gone away to college, she has experienced the world, she's returned to Turtle Beach, but doesn't, you know what I mean? I feel like she's hasn't been sheltered enough to feel this way when things don't go her way. I think that's one aspect that I'm a bit like, okay. And there is a moment where the day is saved by a very easy, convenient fix. There is a very rich benefactor that no one happened to know about on the island, and I don't think I'm giving anything away, at least nothing important. So it's just like, okay, like this is like, why, like, so that whole conflict of saving the aquarium was null and void. We didn't have to stress out about that at all, and yet we did for most of the book. I feel badly if I am giving any spoilers. If you feel like that's a spoiler, I apologize. Maybe I should put like a little thing up. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't think we go into these books like we do a mystery saying, you told me who the culprit was. Like, I'm not doing that with this. So yeah, I did like A Spot of Trouble more, and I gave that 3 stars, even though I had some issues with it. And this is a really cute book. I just also didn't, like, I don't regret reading it, but I kind of view it in the same category as It Happened One Summer. There just was too much drama. Too many stakes were being raised, and the scenario wasn't matching the drama. So I think I will give it 2 stars. I'm so sorry. And that was my September wrap up for part 2. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, if you had some thoughts of your own, I'd love to see them in the comments. Consider giving it a like, consider subscribing to the channel. Give me some suggestions of what you would like to see me do next. I hope you have a great rest of your own reading month, and I hope to also see you in the next one. Bye!